From rage monster to sad dad, the secret evolution of Kratos. Intro. He slaughtered gods, toppled Olympus, and basically burned a civilization to the ground. But his greatest battle was figuring out how to be a father. This is the story of a monster who chose to become a man. Kratos, the ghost of Sparta, is more than just a video game character. He's an icon, forged in vengeance and defined for years by a single, all-consuming emotion: rage. He was a walking storm of violence, the perfect outlet for anyone who just wanted to unleash chaos. But then, something changed. The monster went quiet. The screaming demigod became a stoic, weary dad, and in doing so, he became one of the most compelling characters in modern storytelling. So, how did this happen? How did the developers at Santa Monica Studio take the embodiment of anger and rebuild him into a legendary father? This wasn't a simple redesign. It was a deep, thoughtful deconstruction of a gaming legend. And to understand it, we have to go back to the beginning, back to the architecture of his anger. Section 1. The Ghost of Sparta, the Architecture of Anger. Now, here's a fun fact. In Greek mythology, there's a divine being named Kratos who is the literal personification of strength and power. The game's creators, however, weren't aware of this when they were fleshing out their protagonist. They coincidentally chose the name Kratos, the Greek word for strength, because it perfectly fit the powerful character they had designed. While his namesake was strength, the video game Kratos was built on a foundation of something else: pathos, the Greek concept of an overwhelming emotion that enslaves the rational mind. And for Kratos, that emotion was rage. His story is a pure Greek tragedy. A celebrated Spartan general, he makes a desperate deal with Ares, the god of war, to save his life. This pact leads to his damnation when Ares tricks him into murdering his own wife and daughter. As an oracle cursed him, the ashes of his family were permanently fused to his skin, earning him the title, the Ghost of Sparta. This wasn't just a cool nickname. It was a symbol of the toxic shame he wore on his body every single day. For the next decade, and across an entire trilogy of games, his only motivation was revenge. First against Ares, then against the whole Greek pantheon that manipulated and betrayed him. His rage was a fire that couldn't be quenched. But here's the crucial part. Kratos wasn't just angry at the gods. Deep down, he was furious with himself. The violence he aimed at the world was a classic psychological process known as displacement. He couldn't face his own guilt, so he directed all that self-hatred outward. There's a scene in God of War 3 that shows this perfectly. Kratos, on his quest to kill Zeus, brutally murders Poseidon. This act floods the entire world, drowning countless innocent people, and he shows zero remorse. The destruction is just collateral damage in his personal war. He's so consumed by his own pain that he can't see the pain he inflicts on others. This Kratos wasn't a hero. He was a force of nature, a hurricane of grief that ended not with growth, but with the total annihilation of his world. And then, at the end of it all, with Olympus in ruins and his revenge complete, he was left with nothing. Section 2. The Catalyst for Change, a bridge between worlds. So how do we get from the guy who drowned the world to the father chopping wood in a quiet snowy forest? This is where some fans get tripped up, the seeming disconnect between the two eras of Kratos. But this wasn't a retcon or a sudden personality swap. It was a deliberate and brutal off-screen journey. After destroying Greece, Kratos tried to end his own life. When that failed, he began to wander. The official God of War Fallen God comics fill in some of these lost years, showing Kratos journeying through lands like Egypt, haunted by the ghosts of his past. He's a man trying to outrun his trauma, but his past refuses to let go. The blades of chaos, the very weapons that were part of his greatest sin, would magically reappear by his side no matter how many times he tried to get rid of them. It's a powerful metaphor. You can't just throw away your trauma. It will always find its way back. This period of wandering wasn't a vacation. It was a soul-crushing quest for a place where he could finally be free of the monster he'd become. His arrival in the Northlands wasn't an accident. It was a choice. He chose to go to a land where no one knew his name, where he could bury his past and, most importantly, try to control the rage that had cost him everything. He didn't just calm down. He spent years in self-imposed exile, actively fighting the beast inside him. The silence we see in the 2018 game isn't emptiness. It's the sound of a man holding back a tsunami of fury with every ounce of his will. Section 3. A New Beginning. The Birth of the Sad Dad. The Kratos we meet in 2018 is a man fundamentally changed by two things: time and love. His second wife, Faye, is the real reason for his transformation. She saw beyond the ghost of Sparta and loved the man underneath, and together they had a son, Atreus. As creative director Cory Barlog has said, the new saga is about Kratos teaching his son how to be a god, while his son teaches him how to be human again. His main motivation is no longer revenge, but a deeply personal quest to fulfill Faye's last wish, to scatter her ashes from the highest peak in all the realms. This journey forces him into the one role he's completely unprepared for: parenthood. He wants to protect Atreus and teach him, but the only lessons he knows are violence and survival. He's distant, harsh, and emotionally constipated. He calls his own son Boy, not just as a nickname, but to create emotional distance, terrified that getting too close will end in the same pain as before. Notice how Kratos' body language reveals his inner conflict. In the first few hours of the game, he rarely makes eye contact with Atreus. His posture is rigid, his fists clenched even in quiet moments. He's a coiled spring, constantly suppressing his instinct to either rage or retreat. This nuanced performance was brought to life by actor Christopher Judge, who provided both the voice and motion capture for the role, and won Best Performance at the Game Awards for his work. This new technology allowed for a level of subtle, emotional expression the original games simply couldn't achieve. This evolution is best seen in his relationship with his weapons. For most of the game, he refuses to use the blades of chaos, the symbols of his past sins. He fights with the Leviathan axe, a gift from Faye. It's a tool of protection, not vengeance. But when Atreus falls gravely ill, Kratos is forced to return home and unearth the blades. This isn't a triumphant moment. It's a moment of resignation. He accepts that the monster is part of him, but now he'll wield that power not for revenge, but to save his son. He is choosing to control his past rather than let it control him. Mid-video CTA. If you're finding this look at Kratos' character interesting, think about subscribing for more deep dives into gaming's greatest stories. We'd love to have you join the community. Section 4. The Path to Redemption, Becoming a God and a Man. If God of War 2018 was about Kratos learning to be a father, Ragnarok and its DLC Valhalla are about him learning to forgive himself. Throughout Ragnarok, Kratos actively fights against his old self. He preaches control to Atreus, he shows mercy to his enemies, and he works to change his fate. The writers made it a core theme that destiny isn't set in stone, so long as you're willing to change. This all leads to the Valhalla expansion, which is basically one long and brutal therapy session for Kratos. Invited to Valhalla by the North god Tyr, Kratos is forced to literally walk through the traumas of his past, confronting younger, angrier versions of himself, and even illusions of old foes like Helios. But instead of fighting his past self with rage, he finally looks upon the ghost of Sparta with compassion. This is the final stage of his psychological journey: acceptance. He stops pretending the monster didn't exist. He acknowledges that the rage of the Spartan gave him the strength to survive, but the wisdom of the father gave him a reason to live. Mentally and emotionally, he is now in his prime. Conclusion. The journey of Kratos is one of the most masterful character arcs in gaming history. Santa Monica Studio took a character that, by the end of the third game, some players and even developers felt was just an unpleasant person to be around, a hero they no longer knew why they liked. and they transformed him into a figure of incredible depth. They proved that a character doesn't need a reboot or to be replaced to evolve. They just need a reason to change. From a puppet of rage to a god of hope, Kratos' journey wasn't a secret. It was a story about the hardest battle any of us face, the one with ourselves. And it leaves us with one final thought-provoking question. What does the future hold for a Kratos who has finally made peace with himself? What kind of god will he choose to be now? What was the moment you first noticed Kratos had really changed? Was it a line of dialogue, a quiet glance, or the first time he finally called Atreus son? Let me know in the comments below. It's a great discussion, and I'd love to hear your take. Thanks for watching.